First of all, I'm so glad that you are here, and we are so proud of you for your resilience, and we are promising you to be short and clear, and maybe we'll promise something at the end. We'll see. For sure, I think there are some nice books that are waiting for you, and in fact, I have it here. This is probably the prize. You will receive it at the end with these great authors next to me. I'm privileged to have this wonderful panel, and you will see why. So if you allow me, we are intending to be even less than an hour. I will sell this, yeah? And I will start just saying a few words at the beginning, if everybody is here, and thank you again for staying alert and next to us. I would say like this: we are living through a governance inflection point, I would say, for the first time in history. And I will quote this book: we have up to 5 generations working and sitting on boards simultaneously. And you will find out who are this generation and more about, because as I said, we have the pleasure and privilege to have here with us the authors of this book. They worked more than 6 years, I think, to this book. And we will discover more. But what is really wonderful in this panel, it's the fact that we will also have Theodora, who is practicing what we will try to preach to you. And this is why this panel really deserves your attention and your presence here. But I will say like this: most governance conversations are still organized around a single question: who comes next, the succession, the transition, the handover. And if leadership, it's not a stick, it's not a baton, I would say, has to be passed. I think the resources must be shared. This is the main idea, and this panel starts from a different perspective. The question we want to explore today is not when the next generation will take over, but how generation can design structure that draw on multiple generations at once, right now in real decisions, with real accountability. And this shift from succession to intergenerational co-governance is the frame of the next minutes we are provoking to have with us. So the evidence from high-performing boards across Europe, Africa, North America increasingly points in the same direction: organizations that integrate generational diversity into their governance structures are more resilient, are more innovative, are better equipped for the complexity of the world. Not because young people are having all the answers, I would say, but because no single persons have the answers. So I will join directly. I will not enter into presentation because already is done, and moreover, what it will be said here, it's more powerful. I will start with we'll have 3 lenses, as you will see: a global strategic case, the practical from Theodora, and the great inflection from the board that Patrick will give us as information. And I will really jump, if you agree, in the questions. Yeah, good. So guys, and I will start with probably with you, Rebecca, or as you are. Why now we are starting to speak about this topic? Why now?
Well, first of all, Flavia, thank you so much for energizing into the last couple of hours of today, and thank you to everyone for being such brave souls and sticking with us. I think there are a few more outside. I loved your framing, Flavia, of now and how. And I wanted to pick up on, I think, 3 people who have said, you know, this is not a nice to have. It was never a nice to have. You know, it is a strategic imperative, and it will become increasingly a strategic imperative. And I think importantly, as Patrick and I talk about in 5 Generations at Work, how we can see, and we have to see, how we can see generational diversity as an asset and as a strategic growth driver. So as a little bit of an entry point into today's discussion, let's take ourselves back briefly to Tina. You know, Tina this morning talked about this complexity as this confluence of force factors that we are all facing in business and society. And one of those is the biggest demographic shift in history. The biggest demographic shift in history that we are all living and working through. And that has profound implications for all of us in terms of our employee base, our consumer base, and our market base. For the first time in history, as you said, Flavia, we do have five generations at work in history. At the same time, you know, and this is the big punchline, that typically applies to most of our customer, consumer, and market base. So again, going back to this is not a nice to have, this is intergenerational business. The question is, you know, not only do we choose to unlock it, how do we choose to unlock it? How do we maximize this melting pot of talent that we have as never before when we think about, you know, what are we not listening to around those boardroom conversations? How are we horizon scanning? You know, how are we debunking the short-termism and really hardwiring onto the longer-term thinking? So that really hopefully kicks us off today with a little bit of the broad picture, the evidence behind the book, and what we're seeing.
Thank you so much. I don't know, Theodora, if you want to continue? Why now?
So in Romania, I'm talking about my perspective. In Romania, the thing is that we are just right now, we are going into the first shift of the generations because of the communism and everything. So basically, that's why in Romania, the moment is just now. I think in Romania, work in businesses just 2 generations, and right now it's the moment when the shift is happening. And here comes the term of succession, which can be debated. I think in Romania it's something which is a taboo subject, because when we talk about succession, we don't think about all the process and everything, what we must go into. And so in Romania, I consider that when you talk about succession, you talk about the negative aspects, like when somebody's dying, like I don't know, something
nice perspective,
bad, something bad happened. And when I graduated the program at IMD, which was called the Next Generation, and that was the point which opened my eyes, because I didn't, even if I was working with my father in the business, we never talk about succession. I was just, okay, he had in his mind, and he had a structure program for myself, for my introduction into the business, but we never talked openly about this. So I consider it's very important to overcome this step and to be able to talk about it openly, because it's not a taboo subject, but can be something, if you prepare in time and you integrate the next generation into the business in time at a proper age, is something that can be successful and should be successful for the future generations.
I like this idea. If you heard, she was introduced in the business. You receive an integration, huh?
Yeah. I'll talk about it
will be very
maybe later
exactly.
more.
Yeah. So, Patrick, why now?
I think we need a big mindset shift. So I think the demographic shifts are incredible. I mean, 1 in 4 of the world very soon will be African. There's another 1 billion people arriving there. In every other continent, populations have peaked some time ago or just now, and populations are declining. And I felt, and Rebecca felt, that this discourse that we've been having about generations has been really regressive, negative, divisive between different generations, when actually my experience is fantastic benefits coming from involving people of all generations. This is not just about younger generations. So there's a wonderful example in the north of England. There's a port, it's called the Port of Tyne. It's a very strategic port for the UK because it's where all the tea for the UK comes in. So it's really significant. It's also where a lot of the cars go out. And they have established a next generation board because, and they don't mean next generation in terms of younger people. They mean the next generation of the port. Who are the group of people thinking about the next generation of this port? And guess what? Their next gen board is multi-generational. It's got some quite elderly people on it. It's got very young people on it. And I think the creativity that emerges from any form of diversity is really good, but that generational diversity is really quite special. I was struck by this on Sunday, actually, because my mother was 90, so I have a 90-year-old mother and I have a 9-month...
Congrats.
9-month-year-old granddaughter. And although my 9-month-year-old granddaughter cannot stand, she can dance. She's a fantastic dancer, and so is my mother. And to watch those two generations connecting, they were communicating in a way, it was really interesting. And it sparked creativity. It was really quite wonderful. I think we need a lot of creativity. We heard that this morning. I think we need a maximizing mindset when we think about this issue. And it's not just about having young people on the board, older people on the board. It's about how do we involve different generations, not just to solve the problems that we have, but to seize the opportunities that we have. And I think it's really, really critical that we do that now.
It's the perfect conclusion, because this allows me to go to my next question, exactly in the pragmatism I promised to you. Let's deep dive a little bit, maybe with examples, how this co-governance really actually is working in order to convince our audience. And maybe we'll start with you, Theodora, because let's speak about real life examples. So how does this co-governance is working with you?
So I'll talk just from my perspective. I consider that trust is the foundation of everything what we do, and I consider the trust is like a brick which you add day by day to your future foundation as a leader and as a person. So without trust in an organization, you simply cannot do anything. This is my humble opinion. And regarding this, it's not enough for the next generation to be trusted just by the founder or just by the family itself. It's also important to be trusted also by the employees. And to gain credibility inside a family business, I always used to say that for a next generation family member is much more difficult than for a regular employee or person, or I don't know, a new CEO, a new board member or whatever, because everybody has much higher expectations from your side and the pressure is much bigger. And when you join the company, you simply go there with the luggage of knowledge which you gain just from a theoretical part from the universities or MBA or whatever. So the pressure is way much higher.
And maybe some biases, I don't know,
yes.
from the others.
Yes. I think you are judged by the way you walk, until the way you speak, the way you behave, the time you arrive at the office, the time you leave from the office. Honestly, this was my impression. And even right now, I give you an example. Right now, I take care also of, I mean, when we opened our golf resort, I took care of it also. And in the first part of the day, I was working at our main business in Transavia, but after 3 o'clock, for example, I was leaving there. And I had the feeling that the employees are saying, why is she leaving so early? Because I was going in the other side, working also, you know, but in my head,
But how you succeed to gain this trust? How you succeed to gain this trust? Give us some examples.
I don't know.
Because you are already for a long time there.
I really consider that a really good thing which my father did was the fact that he had a really structured plan put in process when I joined the company, in the way that I had. So right now I'm working for 30 years along in the company, and when I joined the company, I worked 4 years side by side with our workers. Our business is a very complex business. It's fully vertical integrated from grains to fork. So we have agriculture, we have farming, we have livestock, we have energy production, we have hospitality,
so
we
it's
have
an
sales,
entire ecosystem.
and so on and so on. And right now, this year, we are going into the pet food industry, which is something completely new. Yes, so basically, I needed to understand everything from each perspective,
field,
each field. So one of the best things which he did, and which I really enjoyed and liked, and gave me the experience, or the base of the experience I gained in the company, was the fact that I was working day by day with the workers. So 4 years I was going, so my first day of work was in the slaughterhouse, and I was putting drumsticks in the trays together with the workers. And it was amazing because the workers were, I mean, the blue collar employees were shocked when they saw me there doing this. They were like, what is she doing here? And when they saw me like day by day working with them, like a month, 2 months, 3 months, and so on. So I got to know them very, very well. My father didn't know so much employees as I used to do at that time. And I know them, and this was a very good way for me to gain credibility in the company. And I think credibility is something, and trust is something which you earn and which you build day by day, and it's progressively shifted in time.
Thank you so much. Very, very interesting, really. Maybe Rebecca, you will give us some interesting other type of example, speaking of global patterns.
And I love, by the way, there's an example in the book where Patrick and I were curious about family businesses, and we interviewed 3 members of the Mars family, all of whom, as you know, work in the business since a very young age. So I love that example. I wonder, in answering that question, Flavia, if it's interesting to reflect briefly on some of the principles of good intergenerational co-governance that we found in the book. There were a number, but 3 of them I think are probably worth sharing before I share an example. And they are mutuality, collaboration, and respect. And I'm sure they will be very familiar to all of us around the room today. You'll be thinking, yes, I feel that very much applies to my board or how we do things in our organization. But they were fundamental both culturally and structurally, in terms of what was happening in those organizations, on those boards, in those leadership teams, across the business. Because I think the other thing that's so important to this conversation is, and I think we've touched on this in a couple of other panels, getting inside the matrix. How do we get beyond, the vertical architectures and that single flow of knowledge, that single flow of what's happening through to more horizontals and diagonals. So a bit of context there that hopefully might be helpful. In terms of examples, and by the way, I do adore, Carmen, your challenge. We are disrupting panels live here in Bucharest in May. I think it's fantastic. I feel like this is a global first, that panels are no longer panels, they are strategic labs. So hopefully we're going to take you up on that challenge.
Real life on the stage. This is why I provoke you with examples and not
it's
only
all
theory.
About examples. But I love this, exactly. So we are taking on that challenge, Carmen. The example I'd like to share, I want to take us back to 2015. Do we remember 2015? So 2015, what was happening? We all know Gucci. Now, why is this interesting? So just over 10 years ago, this was the new era at Gucci. For those of you who are familiar with the story, it was Marco Bizzarri, Alessandro Michele, and this very fascinating collaborative partnership between new CEO and new creative director. And the context is really important as well, as Patrick always says, context, context, context. What was happening? Well, first of all, what happened is really exciting because this was one of the most successful trajectories in the history of Gucci. It resulted in year-on-year double-digit increase in brand value. That's really powerful for 7 years. Year-on-year double-digit increase in brand value. And Gucci was on a mission at that time. It was cultural, digital transformation. How do we get closer to the next generation of customers? Now, what Bizzarri, the CEO, figured out, and this was part of the genius of that time, was the luxury industry, and this touches on some of your points a little bit here, about the ecosystem, hadn't really thought enough about, in the obsession with the next generation of customer, have we been thinking intentionally enough about the next generation of our employees? And that's what he did. And so the culture of purpose that set out those next 7 years was absolutely fundamental to connecting the employee experience with the consumer experience. And there were numerous things that he did along that way and with the leadership team. But one of them, and it builds on something that Patrick just talked about now, a tangible commitment to doing one thing well, investing in it, sustaining it. It's not symbolic, it's not tokenistic, and that was a committee of millennials at the time, a collective of millennials across the Gucci group who worked as a sparring partner. And a sparring partner, I use that language very intentionally, a sparring partner who worked with Bizzarri on that trajectory of travel, helping to inform, helping to challenge, helping to horizon scan, not only from a different lens, but also the lens that mattered in terms of the employees they were looking to attract, motivate and retain at a time when they were evolving the business. So, hopefully another powerful example of what we can do, being more intentional and having a bit more of a North Star.
Thank you so much. Very interesting. You know, Patrick, guys, it's one of the most, I would say, respected governance practitioners in UK. So for sure, we'll be really keen to find out how do you see, Patrick, this co-governance that is working in the boards, if there are working or not these kind of principles?
I think one of the most exciting things is that it's been organic so far, and people have been finding their own way that's relevant for their context. The rise of next-gen boards is very clear. I mean, I think we found over 200 that we looked at for the book, and they vary in all sorts of ways. Sometimes those next-gen boards, the chair of the next-gen board is on the main board. So where I've chaired a few things where that's been the case, and that's been fantastic. If you're going to do that, do not put the burden of responsibility on that young person for representing all young people. The most important thing about these things is they are not representing anyone. They're bringing their insights, they're bringing their challenge, they're bringing that sort of maybe more positive mindset. Sometimes it's hard if you're on a board and you've been battered down by all the stuff that's going on. You know, suddenly an injection of someone who's actually really excited to be there rather than thinks it's, you know, a burden to be there, can change the mood, So next-gen boards is one way. Other people have had just buddies to the C-suite. C-suites are interesting. I mean, they seem to be proliferating. I found a company the other day that had 24 C-suite members, 24 chiefs. About the only thing they didn't have a chief for was Wednesday. But they've buddied up, you know, each of those people with a person from a different generation, not all young people again. Other people have done quite interesting things. They haven't just picked people from within the organization. They've picked people from sometimes the supply chain or the customer base or a market that they're not in at the moment. So some people might be thinking that, you know, Africa is the major growth opportunity for many businesses. Most businesses don't really have a robust Africa strategy. I know a number of people who are getting young Africans to join their next-gen boards because they can give them that perspective on Africa. Siemens is really interesting. Siemens is a very large German engineering company I do some work with. They don't have a next-gen board. They have what they call challenger committees. They're German engineers, so challenger committees. I did point out that this was the name of a very successful UK tank, but they didn't find that too amusing. But what they found, which was really interesting, was they got a group of young people from across the Siemens business and supply chain, and they said, we must train these people how to be, you know, board members together, this next-gen board. So I spent a fantastic time training them. And I remember saying to the CEO, actually, don't we also need to train the executives? Because you've mandated these young people to come in, to challenge, to bring these fresh ideas. And the board thinks it's fantastic. But actually, what you're really asking them to do is challenge your executive. Now, this has been a very hierarchical, quite, you know, traditional type company. If you bring in a load of people, then you might find you get some resentment from these people who've worked so hard to get to these positions, think they are the master of that skill, that business unit, whatever, and then you throw in these young people with all these different ideas, you know, you're going to get conflict, which is good, because conflict is good for generating ideas. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Poorly managed conflict is. So they said, no. We've sent our people to INSEAD, we've sent our people to Harvard, we know these are top quality leaders. And the interesting thing, I was joking with the CEO the other day about this. About 6 months later, I got a call from the CEO saying, remember that conversation we had about training the executives? Actually,
it is a time. We
really need it. So I think it's exciting that people are coming up with their own different models. Mars has a very different model. Throughout its business. LVMH has a very different model to Gucci. I think, in a way, we're at that stage where it's better to let people experiment rather than impose a way of doing it. Wales is really interesting. Wales the country, not Wales the animal. In 2015, about the same time Gucci were doing that, they had a Future Generations Act. And what that meant was that every government decision had to take into account its impact on future generations. Now imagine if some of the decisions that have been made that we're dealing with had that input earlier. How good would that be? They also had future generation commissioners and so on. But yeah, so there's lots of different examples, I think. It's exciting.
Very, very exciting, and this gives me the opportunity to think to another idea, to another question. In fact, Rebecca, I will ask you, because I know Rebecca, she is one of the world's leading experts on brand leadership and intergenerational collaboration, and she teaches on leadership programs in Oxford, in Cambridge, I think. So maybe from this lens, if you can give us an answer to the question, really where the generations complement each other. How do you see it?
Well, first of all, is the answer is in that they do complement each other. I think, as we've heard from Theodora and we've heard from Patrick, the co-governance is absolutely the operative part of this. And I think we talked as well before on different conversations about the importance of going back to what Patrick mentioned at the beginning of the mindset shift. Because without that mindset shift, we don't have anything. How do we shift from, the crisis, which who knows how this will continue to manifest, but we have to see the opportunity where we can take it, and we have to shift increasingly from short term to long term. And building on Patrick's point, I think also thinking about, and that's where this notion of the different forms, there is no norm of intergenerational co-governance per se at the point in time. I'm sure that will come. But it is genuinely exciting to see the ways in which that's manifesting. If we take the Future Generations Act, really fascinating. It also shows up in cultures such as Japan, with some of the oldest family businesses in the world, sometimes 400, 500 years plus. Thinking about, again, the entire purpose of a family business, as we were saying, is to hand that down to and pass that forward to the next generation. So this long-term thinking is mission critical. And at a time, as we were talking over dinner last night, we're living in a world of partial attention, fractured attention. Where are those spaces between? Where is the space and breathing space in our organization? Because I think, again, we can't hope to better understand the how, and how we get to how we complement each other, unless we have sometimes the space to do that. We've created also that we're living in this frictionless world, and Andre mentioned this earlier on about, do we even have time for reflection? I've studied a lot, the work of Megan Wrights, the academic. She talks a lot about we're living in a world of pathological busyness. So on the one hand, we have an age of AI and automation that is creating ever greater efficiency. Well, what are we doing with that time? Is that enabling us, to Patrick's point, where is that lifeblood and breathing space then for the creativity, the ideation, and the innovation that we so need? And I think one of the favorite books quotes, and you'll get to again, Patrick and I joked over this as we wrote the book together. Exactly, and Patrick and I have written many books separately between us, but I said to Patrick, I have to say, I am a bit of a quote nerd, which Patrick loved, thankfully. But one of the quotes that people come back to is one, and it's pretty, I'll give a short version. The short version is this. It was a prediction a while ago that a quantum leap in technology will command and demand a quantum leap in human relations. Well, we're here. That time is now. Anyone know who that quote is attributed to? Any guesses? Interesting. When I share that, a lot of people answer it's one of the tech bros, because I don't date timeline. It's actually Einstein. So, dear prescient Einstein, all those decades ago, that visionary, which again, this temporal frame of reference that I think we've all talked on, it's helpful sometimes looking back to look forward. You know, the reflection on what we can learn from the past and how we think more intentionally about foresight. And I think what I'm passionate about is the quantum human in this, is that we do not lose sight of the quantum human in the quantum tech.
And I think, Theodora, you had a brilliant point earlier on, because when you look at the challenges of managing intergenerationally, they're about understanding. So if we can understand a group that's different to us, whether that's race, whether that's gender, whether that's age, if we can take the time to understand, so the time you spent, I think that was a fantastic example, and love to hear more about that. And find it, and also that probably helped you develop how to communicate with that group. So you were building respect, you were building understanding, you were communicating obviously effectively with them, and you were open to them, open to their ideas, from what you're saying earlier. I think those three characteristics of taking the time to understand, learning how to communicate, so you're not, as one of my sons says, dad dancing. I don't know if you have that in Romania, but you know, when a father dances, it's usually hilarious, but rather than groovy or cool or whatever word you use. But those three things, I think, it'd be good to hear a little bit more about how you, some of the communication stuff is quite interesting, because it's daunting going into a group like that, I would have thought.
And maybe some mistakes that you did or the others did in order to learn from this.
Yeah. So about the mistakes, of course, probably we did mistakes, and we are currently doing mistakes. So everybody
Which is great, because we are learning from this.
You learn from them, you learn from the mistakes, hopefully. I think one of the mistakes, I talk from the perspective of the next gen right now. I think shielding the next generation and overprotection can be one of the mistakes which, I don't know, the board members or the founder can do, because I don't know, maybe from too much protection or too much love you want to shield them, but it's not okay in the way that if they join the business, they must see everything, the good days, the bad days, the tough decisions, bad choices, good choices. They must be exposed to everything, because otherwise you delay their development. Another mistake may be, I don't know, give them too much authority at the moment when they don't deserve it or when they didn't earn it, because in that moment you decrease their credibility in front of the others.
This is why it's so important to find out the good moment.
Yeah.
To give this trust.
So here I honestly admit that when I joined the company, of course I had this training program, but after my father put me, or the title of my job was co-CEO, and this was not okay. I mean, I'm very honest, and I talk openly here. Mm-hmm. Of course, this was just a title, but maybe it decreased my authority at that moment, and I needed to work even more.
Paradoxically,
probably
he wanted vice versa.
Yes, and I needed to work even more to prove again that I'm there just because I deserve to be there.
Or maybe he did it on purpose.
Yeah, maybe.
To raise the bar.
Yeah. And I don't know, another mistake may be also from the founder generation, for example, just to involve the next generation into the business without having a structured process in place or in mind, just, I don't know, exposing them to the business and consider that if they are exposed there, they simply gain experience, or which is really not the case. I really consider that it's important to have a mentor, either in the business or either coming outside the business, to be able to talk with and gain experience in a role model, as someone said before. These three mistakes come to my mind right now.
A really fun example. One of the things I'm quite keen on is that you put next-gen board members on each subcommittee, and some people say, I remember one chair I was speaking to, he said, what, even remuneration? And I said, you've just made this young person jointly and severally liable with you. They have all the same director's responsibilities as you, and you're not going to tell them about the remuneration, which they can then read in the annual report anyway later? What's wrong with you? And I remember at EY Foundation, which actually both Rebecca and I were on the board. I was the chair at the time, and Rebecca was chair of the nominations committee, and we put a member of the Next Gen board on each subcommittee, including the nominations committee. And I think, apart from Rebecca, obviously, The highest performing person on that nominations committee was 19. This young woman, who's now a seriously good litigation lawyer, at the time, 19 at university, she had the best, I think you used the phrase BS before, the best BS radar I have ever experienced. Her ability in interviewing people, in selection panels, outstanding. To cut through the nonsense, amazing thing. So I think that's another way, but it was quite interesting where sometimes people, the mistake, it's overprotecting. Yep. It's just like setting too higher expectation, setting too lower expectation is really damaging as well.
I was wondering, Patrick, if the chairman of a board has something to say in this kind of dynamics.
Yeah. So I became chair of the Royal Voluntary Service in the UK. It's one of our largest volunteering organisations, and we're setting up a next-gen board. And we have a fantastic chair of it. She's from Salesforce. She's sort of early 20s, fantastically bright, very skillful interpersonally, incredible young woman. And again, there was a little bit of, I mean, it was kind patronizing. So it was well-intentioned, but it was wrong. Someone was sort of almost not patting her on the head, but, kind of, it'll take you a while, and, all this sort of thing. And I just had to say, look, please don't do that. I know you mean well. And it's quite important when people don't, I think if you over-punish people for those little slips, you really make everybody nervous. And it's not good for the young person either. So, but you have to give just good feedback. And I think feedback and communication constantly about these things is really, really critical.
And I think building on a point that you made earlier, Patrick, and you touched on this as well, is that, and going back to the breathing space point, there's a quote from the LVMH example in the book. There are many others, but this is something that came into being. And one of the punchlines is, it succeeded because we didn't over-metric it. We didn't over-KPI it. We didn't put too many metrics around it at the beginning. Doesn't mean to say that metrics aren't crucial to how they look at, how it's performing and how they're tracking it. And that also speaks to, so this is LVMH Dare. It's a platform for entrepreneurialism, it's collaboration, it's innovation. And the reason that I love sharing this is that it was inspired by one individual. So going back to some of the things that you said, again, where agency can come from. And when we think about what Gabriella and Carmen were talking about at the beginning, and how we need to be careful about, this balance between, the short-termism constraints, we can't really go so far. But really it's in those longer-term North Stars. Well, those longer-term North Stars, and as you indicated, Patrick, they're not taking infinite amounts of time or resource. So LVMH Dare came about. It was inspired by one person in a company of 200,000 people. And she had an idea. At the time, she was figuring out where to go with her career. So she was thinking, I've been at LVMH for 4 years, but I really don't have any idea about the other 74 brands. 74 brands. You may have 74 in a few years' time with your ecosystem. But what an interesting moment in time, because Patrick and I were fascinated by these kind of scenarios. Instead of solving the problem for herself, she thought she put herself in the shoes of, going back to Patrick's example of the Future Generations Act, she said, if I'm seeing this, surely 199,000 other people are seeing this as well, in the same way that you were going around the shop floor and you were experiencing this hand to hand. And so she simply took this idea to her head of people, her head of learning, and she said, what do you think? I'm seeing these things. And by the way, I don't think we really are investing in how we collaborate across the organization. And that's how the platform was born. 8 years later, it's still going strong. Through COVID, it became one of the best things that they could have possibly have done, because it was a horizontal that connected people across different disciplines, different functions, and different cultures across the entire organization.
Wow, great example.
Great ideas can come from anywhere. And the final thing is, Leticia said, she said it was about staying humble and listening. So again, going back to your point, Patrick, and your point about having that humility. Are we really listening? Who are we listening to? And back to your point of the how. So I love that story because it's one individual's agency.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting. I hope you are loving also. We are passionate here, as you noticed, but we are also at the beginning promised you that we will be, on time, maybe even earlier. So I'm provoking you to think to some ideas of discussion after, or maybe we'll take only one question. We'll see.
But or a case study, or something that people are doing.
Exactly. But I will conclude asking you all, first of all, to bring to the audience your main idea about how really can work this intergenerational co-governance. If you can give us some practical tools, examples, very quickly. And I will start with you, Theodora, if you agree.
So as I said before, I don't know, in my opinion, trust, care, and responsibilities are some of the values which you should have or must have when you enter a co-governance process, because without trust and without the values which are the foundation of an entity, you cannot succeed. Mm-hmm. And also for the next generation, it's important to see these role models and to be involved into the business. And I would close this with a question, or with a remark for the next generations. I really consider that, from my perspective, having the opportunity of being born in a family business, it's an opportunity for life. It's an opportunity, and in the same time a responsibility which you should and must accept, because in life sometimes you have to do also what is needed, not necessarily what you want or what you want at that moment to do. So it's your responsibility as a next generation to take it over for the sustainable future of the next generations to come.
What a great conclusion. I really love it. Thank you.
I love it too. It's great. We can't wait to tell Theodora's story, by the way, in the next edition of the book. We've already banked that. And anyone else's story who wants to be in it, that's an open call to action.
This is great. So
this
it's
is
call
great.
to action.
I know, we're making history as we're going.
So we'll have another book, yes?
Always. So very quickly, we'll wrap it up. 3 things. There's always the rule of 3. Understanding, communicating, maximizing, absolutely imperative, that maximizing mindset. And what do we start on Monday? What do we start on Monday, and how do we start it? And the how, going back to your brilliant call to action at the beginning, is absolutely crucial, because it's about not doing hundreds and hundreds of things, that may or may not stick. It's about doing fewer things well, investing in them, investing in the development, as Patrick said, sticking to them and sustaining them. And lo and behold, this is why we see the Financial Times Next Generation Board almost 7 years later. This is why we see LVMH platform Dare 8 years later. These are things that have been invested in, intentional, and are sustained over the long term.
And my example would be 6 months ago I spoke at something like this, and there was someone in the audience who was the chief people officer of a very large professional services firm. And I said what I'm going to say now. Just take a problem or an opportunity that you have and get a multi-generational group together to just think about how we might solve that problem. Her problem, she was sitting there with a problem, which was their benefit system. Everyone hated it, but they didn't know why, because they were offering like everything. She got a multi-generational group on it, and she found that actually the benefit system was designed by people mostly in their late 40s and early 50s, and wasn't really relevant to either younger groups or, almost like 3 generations before them. So this group came together and they designed a much simpler menu, and it's only a month in now. They did it really quickly, only a month in now, but she said it's been fantastic. The latest engagement survey, just coincidentally timed with it, said, it's fantastic, our benefit system's been improved. That was a multi-generational group. They did not pay a penny to consultants for that, so apologies to anyone who's a consultant, but it was really, really an interesting thing that they solved it themselves. So pick an opportunity, preferably, or a challenge, and just get a group of people, different levels, different places, different ages, and set them at that problem.
Thank you so much. There is any question from the room? Because if there is no question, I will conclude asking you a question. And maybe because we spoke here about time of reflection, this is the moment for reflection. And I'm asking you if intergenerational co-governance will become mandatory by law, starting from tomorrow. Are your organization really better, stronger, or they will become weaker? We are ready for this? Let's think about it. I'm so honored and happy to have the honor to have these great three panelists next to me. It is a pleasure, and I'm inviting you to have questions and stay next to Patrick and Rebecca for more information about the book. And Theodora, I would love to have in the future a new discussion, because really everything you told us here is remarkable and are good examples for us, the rest. You are living what we are trying to preach, and I hope we are succeeded to preach these ideas today, and I hope you will take some ideas and put it in action in your organization, in your boards, in your companies. Thank you so much again.
Thank you also.
Thank you.
And we still have time.